All right, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to start the tonight's Cable Advisory Committee. If we would all ask if you could not mute yourselves when not talking, it just saves on a lot of background noise that's going on in your homes. And Kevin, who is also on the committee, has a presentation. So Kevin, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay. Well, without any further ado, seeing how this is by far the most populated cable advisory committee that we've had, apparently people did get encouragement to show up. So I appreciate you all coming in. And so here is a primer and hopefully something that is both background of why we're here, to stimulate people to think about potential ideas. And yes, I do have my own idea of potentially utilizing the fees that a lot of people were probably not even used to. Now, can everyone see my presentation fine?
I don't think it's up yet, Kevin.
Oh, you know what? I don't think I shared screen, did I? Well, that was not the smartest move in the world.
Yep, it's up now.
Terrific. Okay, so what is a PEG fee? Well, it's basically the public education government fee that's assessed to cable subscribers in a municipality for the purpose of funding public education or government programming for each community. I'm sure, I trust most people are aware of this. They've been around for 50 years in Massachusetts. Unless you've only lived in West Newbury your whole life, which I know is the case, you probably lived in a community with a vibrant public programming. Joining us is actually a contractor for us, Adam Stone, who works, I believe, down in Somerville, or used to. I mean, there's a lot of very, very vibrant public cable programming that's going around for decades. The PEG fees are negotiated between each municipality and the cable companies that are applying for a local cable franchise. So I know this is an unpopular slide, and I hope it doesn't drag me down for the rest of the night. But in the interest of transparency, here is my cable bill at the end. $27 of just ridiculous fees, I understand. You know, I understand some of these. Federal universal fee goes into, trying to build broadband in rural areas. The Verizon property tax recovery charge, I think that's we charge them property tax on the telephone poles, so they get to, charge us back. The thing that angers me the most is this regional sports network fee, which is basically making me pay for Nesson and a few other things that, and it goes right into their pocket. So I'm as teed up on these fees probably as anybody, but one of the fees that exists is our PEG grant fee. And you can see relative to everything else, it's not a large fee. This is the only fee that's on this bill that goes to West Newbury. All right, some go to Massachusetts, some go to the federal government. Most ironically go to the cable provider. So what has West Newbury been doing with the PEG fees all these years? Well, I don't know. I can tell you that my first involvement with Newbury Cable was in 2006 when I helped negotiate the Verizon Fios franchise. I also was around when the cable channels launched televised meetings for the selectmen and other things around 2010. And then around 2012, dropped off the board and just recently joined about a year ago. So the West Newbury PEG fee is 3% of cable services, which is billed monthly and it is paid to the town quarterly. This represents the low end of PEG fees collected by other communities. Some fees are as high as 7%, many are in the 5% range, and really 3% is the bottom of that range. Up until about 2016, all the surplus PEG fees were just swept into the town's free cash accounts. So that's what's been happening probably since the mid 90s. And for approximately 4 years, although Angus might have a more precise date, the surplus PEG fees have been building up into a single account, which people are probably wondering how much money is in there. So right now, in terms of surplus, and Angus, you can comment maybe at the end if I'm really wrong, is I understand about $165,000 in surplus money in the account right now. At first blush, I guess I said this at town meeting once about a couple of $1 million in terms of trying to buy open space land. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's really not. So $165,000 does sound like a lot of money, but when you compare it to some of the operations and expenses, it's not a lot. So how much money is accruing each year? Approximately, and Angus, you might have a better handle on this, is about $23,000 a year with a very, very big fine print. The PEG fees are for cable services only. Therefore, the trend of cutting the cord, that's cutting the Verizon or Comcast, that is keeping the Verizon or Comcast high-speed internet connection, but not buying cable programming from them. Doing this will negatively impact the cable PEG fees. And that's what's been happening. I don't know how precipitously the decline has been. I have a feeling it's been pretty good. And I have, unfortunately, every expectation that it'll just get worse. So what are our annual expenses? And for the past several years, it's mostly been about $5,000 a year. And those expenses are primarily for contractor costs to record the selectmen's meeting, post it on YouTube, schedule it onto the broadcast, onto the local cable access, and also pull down other programming from around Massachusetts and try to build up some programming on the two different access stations, one on Comcast and one on Fios. Also, we haven't really had any major capital equipment upgrades in several years. And I can be corrected, but I understand the current estimate for new capital equipment upgrade is about $32,000. In the past, the equipment was generally leased to own over 5 years with the low interest rates and things. So even without our cash surplus, or even with our cash surplus, that's not a bad way to keep your cash flow low. So who controls the spending of all these PEG fees? Well, the simple answer is the town government, however you want to define that. The Cable Advisory Committee was tasked, or honestly, I went to the Board of Selectmen and asked them to task us to seek public feedback and ideas to use the remaining PEG fees and report back to the Board of Selectmen any ideas, suggestions. And this is what the purpose of this meeting is as part of that process. So what are some of the options, at least that I can think of, and I'm obviously very open to anybody, this is what this meeting is for, of using the PEG fees? Well, this one simple answer is just keep it the way it is. Don't do much, return the funds to free cash and be done with it. I've even heard more stronger suggestions, but we'll leave it at that. Another route to go is just to invest our funds into, a typical cable access station with staff producing and also content and also training citizens to produce local programs. This option obviously has had a lot of challenges, expensive capital equipment, operational expenses that are going to be outpacing our revenues. So, and most importantly, and this is why, I obviously have known about this fund for a long time, and I'm sure many people on this call or meeting might be just getting introduced to this concept. But frankly, I never felt that there was any demonstrable evidence that we could sustain ourselves in this kind of effort. So I never really brought it up. And if it was getting swept into the town free cash, that was fine with me, because frankly, I didn't think there was viable, good reasons to do anything else. And however, maybe there is a hybrid approach. Maybe something that can achieve the goal of the PEG fees, of introducing the public to, local media and creating content for both, potential future careers and or just trying to tell local stories and cover local things. But so can we do a hybrid approach that has that kind of intention of the PEG fees, but at the same time, maybe we can leverage it for other West Newbury community goals and create some level of community interest that will sustain this effort, beyond, a few years of investment and excitement. And frankly, in the long run, has to sustain this effort either to justify, potential town expenses to take things over, or to be able to raise money through nonprofit and other avenues, because again, this is going to be a dwindling revenue thing. And that's why we're having this meeting. Ideas are welcome. Obviously, I don't expect anyone to, unless you have one, come off the top of your head with a great idea. And I just encourage people to give it thought, contact me. I'd be more than happy to chat and, share your ideas with us.
Well, Kevin, I think too, maybe people need to know what we're doing now also, and trying to get programmed with local stuff and what's really on there.
Let me get through this, Glenn. I appreciate that. So what could a hybrid plan look like, at least maybe in my eyes? Provide training and basic equipment for town boards and organizations, citizens to create, multimedia content. It doesn't have to be boring Wayne's World cable programming. It could be just even Facebook infographics about, town information or bug information for, the garden club, or, all the different information people are trying to push out, or short videos to inform people. Again, the resources may not sustain staff, but could rely on contracted or volunteer time for training the committee or group. And I do have some suggestions or ideas that could fill that void. Trying to reimagine cable access of the 1980s and reinvest into the reality of today. The cost of entry is low. It's so simple today for people to be doing, cell phone videos, and teach them how to edit it and teach them how to put titles on it and simple things like that. So everything is really viewed, I think, in a 180-degree difference than 40 years ago. And I think that's what we should potentially think about and encourage people to embrace the digital age. And again, can we leverage the funds to achieve other community goals? And that's why I really wanted and hope there are people from lots of different groups here. There's been always talk about creating multi-generational community center. Can we fuse an idea of the town commitment for preserving our history with an equally strong commitment to preparing future generations for, the values and tools for the future? So that's my lofty hope and goal. And to be more specific, I suggest utilizing the space in the soon-to-be renovated Soldier and Sailors Memorial Building to create a civic media center. The mission that would provide training to an array of basic media tools to create content for digital platforms that we live in today. Additional focus on training people to help preserve their family historical photos, and encouraging people to create histories about their families and about our region. Ideally partnering with educational, historical, and other community groups, we can turn that dilapidated building into a civic center for the 21st century. That is part museum and partly a place for teenagers to learn video game design, next to a senior restoring family faded photos, to a high school film student helping a neighbor do a documentary about their grandparents. for their grandchildren. So, hopefully we can inspire something. As we know, this idea was talked about in July 2019, of viewing the piece, yes, Voices of West Newbury, that yes, I did produce. And so I'm obviously, kind of motivated in this kind of direction. But again, the only way something like this could be successful is the money helps, but we need to have a wide amount of buy-in from the community so that it can sustain itself. So those are my ideas. What are yours? What kind of questions do you have? And there's my information. And I apologize, Glenn. So you can take over. Or not. Maybe anyone else might have some questions.
Sorry about that, Kevin. I was just trying to unmute myself and I was on another screen. So that was a great presentation. There's a lot of substance in there. There's a lot of kind of challenges in there. So, but just I want to make sure it's clear that end one about that's not, we haven't even really talked about that as a cable committee, but that was your idea that was presented to us. So that really doesn't have any, we're not
bearing
down the road
or bearing on the recommendations to the selectmen, although,
well, no, I understand that, but I don't want people to think that's like down the road a little bit. That's, like we have started on that. It's a great idea. It's very infancy.
Where we are right now is actually just where we are, our PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, so I thought if anybody had any basic questions about your presentation, that's probably where we would start, and then we can then open it up to a discussion about like what people's philosophy, if they have any, or like what they think we should be doing with it, or hopefully wanting to sign up and be a constant voice and an idea maker and try to do something collaboratively. So if anybody has any questions about Kevin about the presentation, I think just unmute yourself, please, and just say your name for the record. And that's it. Thanks, Kevin.
This is at one point I just want to clarify, if I could. It's not a big point, but I just want to. So Kevin, I thought that was great. Thank you. This is Angus. I'm the town manager. On the status quo, I think that was. I just want to clarify that that was really interesting to me, what you said about that it had been swept into free cash going up to like 2016. I had not known that, and that's surprising to me. So I just want to clarify in terms of today's status quo. My office wouldn't be sweeping this into free cash. In my view, that's there for a purpose. It's going to stay in that fund until it's expended. So I just wanted to clarify that point as far as the status quo today.
This is Elisa Grammer. I agree. And there was a ruling, I believe, when I was back on the finance committee, that we couldn't do that anymore. We couldn't just move it into free cash. It had to be used for specific purposes.
At town meeting, we set up this fund so we could then save it. If everybody remembers, this had to be voted at town meeting. So we set up this fund so it didn't do the mechanism too back then. Excuse me, that you could not carry it over year to year. So that's why it got put into free cash. By setting up what we did at town meeting, this revolving fund, then now we could save it, and it accumulates in the aggregate year to year rather than being swept in. So town voted on this. So it wasn't like somebody was doing it intentionally. There was no mechanism to be able to save it until we voted on it at town meeting. Kevin?
Can I speak up? So Kevin, that was great. It was very interesting. And I like the creative thinking about potential use for the Soldiers and Sailors building. What would you guess it would cost in terms of capital outlay for equipment to set up a little lab or studio, that would be sufficient to do something that was useful?
Kevin, do you want Adam to speak to that, or do you want to take that question on?
Kevin, you're muted. Kevin, no, we can't hear you. Yeah, you're muted, Kevin.
Sorry about that. Don't you guys wish I always could be muted? I think Adam and I should both probably tackle it because I think we'll have two different perspectives. I am definitely taking a smaller footprint perspective, partially because of the nature of the building and maybe the nature of, the mission, TV, a production studio can get a little looking like a production studio. And I think that the building is more, it's going to be a museum. It is a museum. It is a memorial. And I think that you can do things, quote, studio in the box. And I'm sure actually Adam would agree with me that, you have some furniture, you have portable lights instead of big hanging lights. And you bring you might have 4 or 5, 10 hours a week, I'm going to make this up, 10 hours a week where there's going to be a space that's going to be a studio. All right. And yes, it might take you an hour each on each side to set it up and break it down. But then you have the building, you have the room, you have the space. And so, you get a blue screen or a green screen that people might be familiar with. That literally could be a gallon of paint from Home Depot. All right.
Hey, Kevin.
It's cheap, Rick.
Yeah. I'd rather not go into the actual details of it rather than just like give it amount. So because we'll be sitting here and might be discussing the design of it.
10, 20 grand for, now Adam might disagree with me on this, but 20 grand, let's say, for 2 or 3 cameras, a couple of decent microphones, green screen, portable lights, a couple of decent, maybe a switcher of some kind. Maybe that's going a little, Adam, what's your ballpark? No. Yeah.
Great. So does that answer your question, Rick?
Ballpark.
Yeah, that's good. That's really all I need to know. Was it 10 to 20 grand, or was it $80,000? And it's not $80,000, so that's good.
No, it was a good question because you're right, because nobody really knows because nobody really does it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, Kevin, about his presentation?
Yeah, I had a question. This is Wendy Reed. I'm curious if there are any restrictions on the use of these funds.
Yes, there is. You can't, it has to be, PEG, the acronym, it has to be public access, educational government TV. So that there is. So we can't like spend it on, if we wanted to buy a laptop for somebody in the building, the answer is you couldn't use this money. But if you wanted to buy a laptop to use for public access and to use to make sure that the programming is going out over the cable network, then you could buy one. You know what I mean? So it's very restricted to, the educational and the, excuse me, I have something in my throat.
I think that's honestly, Wendy, I think that's an opinion from the town council. I mean, there's a contract between the operator and the town, and I forget exactly the language, but I don't think it shall be. And I'm not aware of any mass general laws that require. And I just look at past practice. I mean, did we break the law up until 2016, by sweeping the money into free cash? I don't think so. I think ultimately at the end of the day, we spent it on free cash, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it might be useful to, I agree with what you said, Kevin. It's not like highly prescriptive, but it's pretty clear. It's one of these, when you see it. And ultimately in the process of paying the bills, it's the town accountant signs off on every penny that goes out of this building, as do I. So yes, if we had a question, really, we could always go to town council, and every now and then we will. But really, it's the town accountant's job to make sure every penny that goes out is properly expended under whether that's an expense account or whether that's a special revenue account like this one. So might be helpful just to give a couple of examples of ways it has been used other than the programming that Kevin mentioned is, for instance, this was before my time, but when the microphones were upgraded in the first floor hearing room, that was paid out of the PEG funds. When I started, I wanted to be able to, make it easier to incorporate visual presentations into board meetings, because in the old days we had people coming in setting up projectors and screens. So we installed that presentation TV. That was paid out of PEG funds. Are there other examples, Glenn, that might just help to illustrate?
Well, I think they spent some
Yeah,
money on
the cameras, the new cameras that we have, and then the money to try to outfit the
town hall, town meeting. They spent some money on trying to.
Yep, town meeting, and then recently we upgraded the cameras from the original ones, and then we started wiring stuff up to the second floor hearing room because we wanted to get more programming, more transparency, try to have as many boards meet in the both rooms, so we could get about over the airways. We've spent it on Adam, didn't we buy a new server or board recently that had to be upgraded?
And if anyone has been down to the town hall basement or the whatever Main Street town
1910 building.
Yes, you'll see the rack of equipment and servers that they use for that we had to buy for sending it off into the cable plant. But again, clearly the intent is to create local public programming, and if we had a lot of money and if we were a bigger city, some of this money pays for 2 studios, one in the high school and one local. There's so much, but the reality is, I think also, hopefully we can maintain the integrity of the intent, but also upgrade it for both, the digital world, because again, they were buying $15,000 cameras back in 1985 that were that big, and now we can buy a camera that's this big for a few $100 that's just as good. So I think that our mission changes.
So Wendy, it's pretty specific in the contracts. So what I'll do is I'll email that to you, so you don't have any. So that would be the proper. We kind of talked about it, and I think we all understand that it's being spent properly. But I'll get you that proper language. I'll email that over to you tomorrow.
Okay, great. No, I wasn't suggesting it was improper. I'm just wondering how broad the definition of education and government is.
No, I got you.
One of the things that was identified in the climate resiliency workshop is an improvement of the emergency notification system, so that vulnerable seniors can be notified if there's flooding or power outages. And so I was wondering if that could fall under this somehow, or whether that's just too much of a stretch.
That's a great question.
That's a good question, and Glenn, you probably know where I'm going with this, but we have some emergency management communication infrastructure on the old Park and Rec building next to Page School, and the building is empty. It's been empty. We actually had to set up a separate insurance policy because it is empty, and Maya doesn't cover that.
The repeaters are up there.
Yeah, and the only reason we can't just knock down the building is because of that equipment, and at some point it's going to cost money to move that equipment, presumably to the Page School. So right now that's kind of in our capital plan. We don't have a funding source. I don't know. And let me just be clear, I'm not suggesting that's a good use of these funds, but I'd kind of be curious if it's an eligible use.
Well, yeah, again, one reason why like this meeting is that
public safety
is that if there can't be a consensus of, using it for community purposes, then yes, let's use it for practical thing.
But I mean, I like do something exciting, do something dynamic, like where you're trying to go. That's
Good. Anybody, any other questions about the presentation? And then we can open it up to some ideas and some discussions and some stuff like that, more abstract stuff.
So I'm Carol Decker. My question is, does it have to be through sort of the cable access, or would educational webinars, could it be used for something like that?
I would, off the top of my head, I would say yes, depending on what kind of, if it was like, yes, I would say for educational webinars.
Yeah, I think, that definitely falls into my mode of like the digital world and all the things that we can do nowadays. And
What goes back, that's actually a very good example. What Kevin was talking about earlier, how it's changed from the 80s and 90s until now. Nobody would even think that would be appropriate or even think that would be happening. So it does evolve. So rather than just having what we all kind of grew up on, the regular like shows and certain things like that, there are different ways to do things now, obviously. So it is evolving. So yes, I would say almost 100% that would be eligible.
so Carol, if I could maybe, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No.
Well, if I could maybe share, how something like that could happen. I mean, obviously anybody can host a webinar and do a webinar or do a Zoom meeting, but this would be a place where someone who doesn't know how to do a webinar, a Zoom meeting, or whatever would learn that. And so groups or committees that are trying to communicate nowadays, and people fumble with some basic stuff. Ideally, this is a place that people would learn how to do that and feel comfortable doing that. So that's the beauty is that we're not spending any money on webinar, or maybe we're spending money on like a monthly subscription to stream a video, to video stream.
No, we're not.
Well, I'm just making this up, Glenn.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah, I know. But when people say things, they all of a sudden.
I'm just making this up. If we're paying, like the fund, let's say, is paying a monthly video streaming thing, that would give access to all the groups in town to, we teach them how to do it, and then they would do it. So does that answer your question? And again, that's just kind of my vision of how that would work.
Is there any other questions?
I don't know if this quite is a question. Well, maybe it is. This is Elise.
Hi, Elise.
And first I want to say Adam Stone did a brilliant job with the Julian Still interview and video. One thing I'm wondering is what kind of play did it actually get, and how can you amplify the attention given? We certainly had it on our website and had a news announcement and so forth and so on. And there are potentially other historical commission stories to tell, and just historical stories. And I'm just wondering about getting play for these, and I would love.
Well, that would be a great agenda item for a cable advisory committee meeting, and get some people in there that know about social media, what we have at our town, what we have like hypothetically at the library or the other organizations, and what their social media is doing, and make sure that there's a bunch of cross sections and we have a collaborative effort at getting it out. That would be a great agenda item for one of our meetings. And then we could get that answered. But you're right, we need to have more. I don't think even people understand that we have the channels that we have.
Well, Glenn, that actually goes back, if I could, for Elise, if I got it right. Glenn, that goes back to that presentation I gave to the selectmen prior to Angus coming on. I believe Rick was.
No, it was Rick hadn't been on yet. Yeah, you're right. That we tried to get more, exactly, and we didn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, to elaborate on that, and I mean, there's a lot of loose pieces of different town groups with their own Facebook page. Now, I know, Angus, you've kind of streamlined a little bit of this, But we were grappling with the very question that she asked just before you came on board. And I know I can share with you, I had some thoughts on that back then that I could dig up and reshare.
Sure.
So can I just say another couple of things? I would love to see videos explaining some of the issues the town faces, particularly before town meetings, so that people could be more educated. But again, you need to have that amplification. You need to have people actually be interested in watching it.
We've actually done that, Elise. We have actually taped a question and answer period, put it online and put it on our station. Nobody watched it.
Well, you know, I mean,
honestly, and hold on, Kevin, hold on. But one thing we have started too, that we didn't mention, that Angus does a town manager report now, trying to get out. We've started that. How many have we done? Probably like 3 or 4.
I think we've only done 3. It's always you know, just trying to find the time. But yeah, I think it's been great. I think it's been well received. It'd be great to do it more regularly.
Yep. I think to her point again, and this is what that presentation was about, is how do you build up that, you know, layers of, you know, like, so you do one video. I mean, frankly, the cable channel, whatever it is, 42 on Fios and 11 or whatever on Comcast, is probably the least effective way to get things out. If I could be honest, I mean, we all know we got different Facebook pages of the local town. We've got YouTube, we get different groups with different YouTube channels. Maybe we have kind of a town branded YouTube channel, or town branded video stream channel that you know, we all know to go to, and you know, we spend a little money again on this fund on simple advertising, like, you know, flyers at the market, in the post office, and the pizza joint. It's not hard, you know, but again, it's this kind of sustained effort to build, to create something that I dare not say critical mass, because we are a town of, you know, 3,200 people or whatever it is. But, you know, I mean, you know, it would be nice to get the town over a period of a year or two acclimated to where to go to get information, you know, WNewbury.org, and it's a streaming channel, or it's always shared off of Facebook. And you know that if you're a member of a Facebook group, you're going to get that message. So I think that that's a great issue to bring up and talk about, and definitely connected to this. But, you know, again, a little different.
Yeah, it might be different, Kevin, but there are parallels that we have to run.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what's the point of spending all this money to do all
if nobody's going to watch it? Yeah, exactly.
Positively. So it's definitely an extension, but, you know, yeah.
I think you need to come up with clickbait. You need to put something on there that's going to get people so upset. You know, tell them that they're going to have to pay $100 a week for their trash to be hauled.
You know, no, okay.
Go look at it.
If you want to get people upset, okay, I think I'm going to run for re-election.
Just kidding.
Okay, Rick. Okay, we can do like the reveal, like LeBron James did when he went to Miami, and we'll try to do clickbait on the station.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Hey, Adam, could you just tell us what we're doing now and with whom you've reached out to try to get more programming, please? And with historical, you've worked with them, and you've worked with the town. Excuse me, the school district.
Adam, one question I have, kind of a practical question, is nowadays, as you know, with these Zoom meetings, the host can hit record and then it records to the cloud, which, you know, are all of the meetings that the Cable Advisory Committee would want to put out? Is it how, I guess, how important is it to the committee that they be put out live at the committee self-recording, getting the video to Adam, and then he uploads it? Because I'm thinking partly in terms of his time, and you know, because you could see how you know, scheduling, you know, could become an issue. But if live isn't as important, I think it is important for certain meetings like selectmen. It might not be as important for others, and that might be a way to get more content up, you know, uploaded without ruining Adam's social life, because he has to.
So we have been.
I go to.
We have been doing that, Angus.
Okay.
And kind of, and I'll give you an example over the years. We would never do town meeting live because then nobody would show and we wouldn't get a quorum. But we used to tape it and then put it out over the airways. But if something's really sensitive and something needs to have immediate feedback, like the playground thing for tomorrow night, you know, that one might not do any good if it's taped too much or something like that. You know what I mean? Where they're looking for feedback to make decisions. So that type of stuff we try to put out is more informational too for the people. But regular meetings, if it's not like a really pressing thing, we record them. He edits them down. He doesn't edit any content, but just tries to get the sound and maybe some lighting better. And then we put it out over the airways as soon as possible. I've been off that whole.
I don't know if we're to the topic of kind of ideas for new content, but one thing that, you know, it's very preliminary, but it came up at the last Capital Improvements Committee meeting, which I think is a really good idea. We've made a lot of progress in helping to kind of pull together, you know, what is getting to be a very comprehensive capital program, and which is great. The downside of that is it's making it more clear some of the challenges we're going to have in funding that capital program, especially, not solely, but especially in the area of water. And that's something that there's a huge amount of data, and it's not something that's easy for, you know, to really articulate. And we were thinking maybe, you know, if we worked with the CAC and with Adam to have some kind of one-off programs. Another thing is paid school. You know, there's enormous capital needs coming down the road, paid school, that people have been hearing about for years, but until you see it with your own two eyes, it's, you know, it's hard to fully appreciate some of these issues. So we thought maybe like a walkthrough of that, you know, get a couple of hours of footage, distill it down to a nice 20-minute, you know, watchable, well-produced video. That might be something, you know, that might be a good thing to work on, say, over the summer, because, you know, capital planning and budgeting for that is going to continue to be such an important issue.
Those are great ideas, and
it's such an important like issue for people to understand. And it's,
and they never, and you don't have the, and you don't have the time to go see it yourself. Right. I mean, that actually kind of piggybacks on what Elise was saying earlier about that can be part of a presentation for town meeting with discussing the articles, have some presentations about some big capital items, or even start running that beforehand and leading up to town meeting, and just try to get people as informed as possible.
Yeah, no, that's a great, that would be a great way to educate and inform people on what really become major decisions, and over broad time. You know, you look at Page School, or as you said, the water issues, that there are so many points to bring up, and it's pretty hard to convey without a combination of both audio and video content.
I mean, I always wanted to do something. Adam and I had talked about trying to get with all the trails, and, you know, just walk with somebody on the trails, and, you know, it'd have a little series of walking West Newbury trails. So sometimes people don't even understand, not sometimes, there's a lot of people don't even realize how many great trails that we have. And but just like walk.
We did that, you know.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted a little bit better. And then, you know what I mean? Do stuff like that. And, you know, educate West Newbury. It'd be an educational portion of what's going on, to go to, you know, educate people about town meeting, the trails, whatever we're doing, the water, Page School, the high school. We could have a whole presentation on there about the renovations of the high school, the building of a new high school and middle school. So is there anything else? And I would ask, hold on for 1 second, please. I'm sorry. I would ask if these ideas, I guess I will get the minutes of this after we read it. But if you have any more comprehensive ideas or something that you've thought about, just email me. And then we're going to address all these ideas and concerns maybe, or whatever, at one of our next cable advisory committees meetings.
There's one thing, this is Dawn Fusco. There is one
Dawn.
thing, and this has been in the back of my mind for a while. Years ago, when the Open Space Committee started, we had a night at the 1910 building in the downstairs hearing room, and it filled the hearing room. We invited all the people that grew up in this town to come to a night, and we had a map, and they were all to talk about growing up in the town and things that they remembered. And we learned about stills on top of hills, so you'd see the smoke, and they knew when the still was. I mean, it was really interesting. A lot of the people that were in that room no longer around in West Newbury. It was taped. There was a map that went with it. And I just wish that somebody, if we could find that, somehow the town could.
Okay. Has anybody looked? Has anybody? You know the old? I think it's the old police station, when the police station was in the basement.
Annie Madden ran the meeting, and the map. I may know where the map is. I'm not sure. Because
you know that room that we have down there, when you go out that in the basement. Yep. You know, that room where there's an old safe, and I think I've been in there once. For I don't even know. I was just talking to somebody, but there might be in there. There's a lot of old stuff in there. Well, we'll look. You know what? This is a good way. This is a good way of getting the word out, and then people start talking, and maybe somebody says, "I have it." I'll ask Jane Wild about that. She's generally pretty good at that. So hold on. I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that, Dawn. I thought you were going to suggest that we should continually do things like that. Oh, well, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Because what actually happened was, I don't know how long the meeting went. It was taped, but we had said that we would run another one, and we never did. And it was just really interesting to see people that grew up, and I'm one of them in this town, how different it was from what it is today. Because I remember being somewhere when Harriet Stanley was in office and her talking, and me standing there and thinking, if you had grown up in this town, you would not be saying those things, because we were made fun of from the other two towns. This was not the town to be in.
No, this was the farmer's town with the.
That's exactly right.
With that smelly river. Nobody would even want to live on River Road.
Yes. Well, I grew up on River Road, and no one was allowed to come play with me because I lived on the river. This was the bad part of town. And just people that live here now just don't understand that at all.
So I think, which we haven't done, but it's a wonderful idea. When we had our bicentennial, I think Jen's on here. They got a grant about Voices of West Newbury, and so we had they paid for that through a grant.
Yes.
And that was a start. And at that presentation, I said, we need to start doing this, because people just do pass in the story sometimes. And, I remember going around here like Pig Turd Lane when I went with Shike, because he yelled and screamed at me that. Yeah. So we need to do that. And that's something that I promise you that we're going to start, and we'll look for the tape. So are there any other questions?
Not questions, but do you want us, I emailed you and Kevin an idea for, just an idea from this working group for the use of the funds to do work with invasive plants.
Yep.
So do you want to talk about that tonight, or just have all those ideas emailed to you?
I would rather send an email and then we could talk. I mean, if you want to talk about it, sure.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean,
it would be better to talk about it after we're going to kind of like bring all the ideas that we get from tonight. We'll probably get a few more and then talk about everything. But yes,
I mean,
definitely.
well, I have, my thought very quickly when I saw it and stuff is that, yes, this is, I mean, again, within the context of not so much what can people do for me, meaning, what can contract labor do to produce things for us? Because basically that's what we're talking about right now.
But yes, this is something that we would want to do, Kevin, definitely.
I understand. I'm trying to frame it within the context of having an established program. Okay.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Because right now,
established programs, you have to have established money.
Well, no, I understand, Glad. I just would appreciate maybe allowing me to finish my thought. An established program, as opposed to, we've been speaking about different things, like for a budget video or this video, and right now we'd be set up to do that via contract work. And so, and that's certainly an option we can, stay with. But again, this long-term idea, and hopefully by long-term, I mean when we have a building that we can move into, or, next spring or a year from fall. The idea would be to empower people to create, learn how to do like infographics on invasive plants or insects and things, so that, someone within, the group, an organization can learn those skills, which frankly, again, are very accessible. I mean, this is, teenagers are doing this almost in their sleep. And I think that part of the goal would be is to empower everybody in what we're doing today. So my answer to that would be yes, absolutely. That'd be great. And what a sustainable program would do is train different committees and different folks to create those kinds of educational content.
Did you want to speak to it a little bit?
What I just said, or what?
No, what Carol said. Not you. I'm asking about Carol.
Oh, yeah. And what I was talking about was more of having professionals in webinars. One of the things, the West Newbury Municipal Vulnerability, that word. Yeah. The planning committee, had identified invasive plants, and really protecting our natural habitats is really one of the top priorities for West Newbury. And so this group was formed, and we've been working since October and have ideas which I had written about even for the 10 top invasive plants. And we want to do some workshops with folks probably May, June, as we're able to start getting back together. But also to have some written materials. So that's where I wasn't sure where we could go with written materials. But then we'd like an evening with experts, that would be continuous. We're going to start one with Doug Talame. We have found funding for that. And he's incredible. He's definitely going to be talking about invasive plants and really nature's best hope, which is us, to really turn all of this around. And you look at the habitats here in West Newbury, we certainly have the opportunity to do so much, but it would be really with some good webinars, whether we create them, but even to have professionals with webinars. I mean, we can be doing a lot with ecological gardening and why native plants, talking about home composting and how to make it really simple. It's not a big thing. So just a lot of different things of what we could do, and also in bringing in professionals.
So I would say definitely all of those things, and that would be a proper spending of the fund, and I think an excellent opportunity to educate people in West Newbury. We have tried to do that in a lesser degree. So it's just a webinar is just another form of giving the information out. Like I always wanted to, when the garden club always has awesome speakers about different stuff. I always wanted to try it. It never just ever seemed to work. We just couldn't try to get somebody there, or the person didn't want it, who was speaking or something like that. But it's just a different way of doing that. I always wanted to do that because and just teaching whatever without me going, going on about it. But you understand, so it is a part of a programming that we could support.
So we did a program for the garden club on invasive plants and how to then put in native plants. And there were 85 people or so that signed up for it. So it was a wonderful way to get people involved.
Yeah.
Because I think tonight is about, maybe, Kevin, if I interrupted you.
I was just going to react. I mean, I think absolutely. And frankly, well, if you're looking to do something this summer, I mean, I'm not sure what kind of, I think the biggest problem you have would be finding your speakers and your resources and the experts. If you need any advice on like these kinds of meetings, I might be able to, help out just to give some advice. But part of my idea also, or the float out, is to use some of these funds as grants, that Angus or the Board of Selectmen or whatever. And so your group, maybe you wanted to pay somebody an honorarium because, the technology of executing it is pretty much free. Your real cost might be finding, and maybe that's what the grant would do. I mean, you would host the thing technology wise, but
the grant would pay for the speaker.
Yeah, and the same thing with like historical stuff. I'd love to see some of this money go match grants that are, digitizing all the photos maybe in maps that the Historical Commission and the Historical Society and the library has, and let's preserve that. And we can use some of our money, but there's a lot of grant money out there. So, I mean, those are the kind of, hopefully, the library of the 21st century, I mean, that's all about gadgets and we might have money for this and fuse together, programs between the library and this thing. So, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, bottom line is we need, is there excitement? Is there interest?
Yeah, we've done this several times. We've reached out to the community and tried to bring people in to create excitement, to be able to do things. And, Kevin and I are the only one on the committee.
Where would stuff be hosted after it was produced? So say, we had a production, some facility that was capable of doing the production, that we had spent some limited amount of money on. So it would be hosted by YouTube, or what would be the best way to host it?
Well,
So
our channels, we have 2 channels, Verizon.
Well,
we have
everything.
Everything.
Rick, to answer your question.
Yeah, our 2 channels, YouTube.
It might be the westnewbury.org streaming channel in 10 years. I don't know, but yeah, I just, I think that the big opportunity, the big reason why I have jumped is that, I've always known about this money and I always knew there was great possibilities, but I just didn't think it was going to happen. I thought it would have been a waste of money. And I just think that the Soldier and Sailors building might be that opportunity, to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, to be honest with you, because, let's get use out of that building now that we've made that commitment, and let's have positive use in the community. And what's the money that it'll take money to do that. And look what we got. All right. And what can we do with that money to make a community effort that's worthwhile for everybody? That's what I'm trying to ask people to, if you're interested, let's try to.
The only thing we know is we don't know. So we're all here for you guys to tell us what to do and work. That's all. So any other questions or maybe comments? Okay. Is it just me, you and I now, Kevin?
No, we're all there.
I'm kidding.
There. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. please email me and I'll pass it on to the committee. We will probably be having a meeting, what, Kevin, in the next couple of weeks to be able to then kind of
Well,
open.
Yeah, I'm not sure what our timeline is. I mean, I don't think Angus, I don't think our timeline's particularly.
No,
I wish
we're
it
not.
was aggressive.
No, but I do think, we're definitely looking for ideas for the Soldiers and Sailors building. So I think it'd be good for you as a committee to look at although the ship won't sail on that because, right, I don't think in fact, I know there's nothing about that use or not that's going to affect the architecture of the actual design. So actually, even that is not particularly, time sensitive.
Because we're looking to start building on that this summer, right?
That's correct.
If everything goes well.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you all so much. We'll try to be as transparent as we possibly can with our meetings. So please look for us if you have any ideas. If you think of something else, it doesn't have to be discussed tonight. Please email me, email Kevin, email Angus. It will eventually get to us, and then we could discuss it at a future meeting. Thank you very much, and make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.